Hey guys, this is Ryan from themoviesdeadworld.net, and as you can see behind me, I am in my Halloween mode right now. I wanted to shoot a video where I actually was able to capture some of the ambiance of my house now that I've decorated for Halloween, and I think I've captured the lighting good enough where you can see my face, but you can also see how spooky it is behind me. I wanted to do the Blair Witch remake for a new video because I had a lot to say about it, and not all of it was very good. So I thought I would bring it to a new video review and let you hear it. And I want to hear what you thought about the Blair Witch remake as well, which was more like a sequel slash remake, kind of blurring the lines between the two. I have an affinity for the Blair Witch Project, and I really enjoyed that one. And I still do. I still like going back to it and watching it because I don't think it never really gets boring to me. I like the subtlety of it, and I feel like I'll get into a little bit more, but I feel like the new Blair Witch movie really lacks that subtlety that made the first film so good. So I'm gonna go right into it now with a review of Blair Witch. When Adam Wingard's new film The Woods turned out to be his sequel to the Blair Witch Project, there was a collective surge of energy for the horror genre. I mean, maybe Wingard and his writing partner Simon Barrett could really do something with this franchise, bringing back Blair Witch from the brink of extinction with a film like the Blair Witch Project 2, Book of Shadows, which didn't do very well at all, and a lot of people really don't even consider it within the canon, or what is now considered a canon now that Blair Witch is out, basically being sort of a remake slash Blair Witch 3. That was the hopeful best case scenario where two horror starlets, Wingard and Barrett, could come together and then revitalize one of the first and best found footage movies, one that really inspired a lot of new found footage films to do the things that they've been doing and expand upon that formula. But watching the trailers for Blair Witch, one couldn't help but wonder if Wingard and Barrett were actually making a sequel or if they were just riding the coattails of what Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick's film had done at the beginning in Blair Witch Project, what made it so mesmerizing to begin with. Blair Witch is kind of using those same ideas and then trying to expand upon them. And there's a fine line between taking those ideas and doing something different with them and then simply stealing those ideas. And from the trailer itself, I really had a hard time distinguishing what this film was going to be doing. But now that I've seen it, the results are in and they're pretty disappointing. 20 years after the release of the original Blair Witch Project, Wingard and Barrett returned to the woods of Burkittsville with a new group of curious campers, and they're ready to uncover the legend of the Blair Witch, which has been basically almost 20 years since Heather and her group disappeared in the woods. They're going to uncover the legend of Blair Witch, of Rustin Parr, which they all know very well by now. And they're going to go through basically the exact same ordeal that the first characters experience. Barrett's script follows James, who's basically the brother of Heather Donahue from the first film. He receives a cryptic video over the internet stating that someone has found new video from her. It looks to be her in the same house that she disappeared in previously. And James is all gung-ho about exploring it. He's ready to go find her again. He thinks even I think it's like been in the film itself like maybe 16 to 18 years since Heather's gone missing. So he's ready to go find her. He thinks that she's still there. She's still in that house somewhere. And he's accompanied by his best friend Peter and his girlfriend, and Peter's girlfriend Ashley, and along with his friend Lisa, who's doing a kind of a documentary series for her project at school, even though some of the group, like Peter, doesn't really think that she should be shooting it because she's kind of using James's grief about missing his sister Heather as fodder for her project and her film experience. So it's kind of questionable whether she should really be filming this documentary, but as we all know and has to happen, she does it anyway. She films it. So they're heading into the woods, and they explain some of the original Blair Witch Project along the way. Wingard, he uses a lot of the same found footage techniques in this film, You get a lot of opening dialogue at the beginning to kind of give us some exposition, some character development about these people. We see them like drinking in bars and making sure that we get a lot of development and at least know something about these characters to give us a reason to root for them when they actually go into the woods and start getting murdered by the Blair Witch and her minions in the woods. So I guess it's an important part of found footage in general, but again, in Blair Witch, it doesn't really work as well as the director probably expects that it will or hopes that it will, because it just ends up being really boring. And that's a problem with found footage in general. A lot of that, lead up to the actual film isn't necessary. It's inclusion of like home video footage that, if you were actually watching a real video like this, you'd probably skip over it. That's like akin to somebody saying, hey, do you want to watch my vacation video? You're at Thanksgiving or something and you're like, no, I really don't. But I guess if you're going to force me to watch it, then yeah, I will. So that's basically the same thing that Blair Witch does, and really all found footage films do in the first part of their film. And it takes a little while for the Blair Witch film to really get going and actually see some of the supernatural scares that are pretty much the same throughout this film as they were in the previous Blair Witch Project. Along the way, our group of cast members meet up with Lane and Talia. They're the ones who originally found Heather's tape, and they have some really fishy things about them. One of which is that they have a gigantic Confederate flag in their house, and especially Peter is really uncomfortable with that. But at the same time, Lane's really kind of a douche. Talia is okay, but she kind of goes along with Lane. And I have to say that Wes Robinson really does not do a great job with acting, and he's not a great portrayer here of Lane. I don't know if it's the writing, if it's direction, or if it's just Wes Robinson himself, but Lane as a character, really, really not great. There are two huge paradoxical issues with Wingard's direction, and it's probably safe to say that he wouldn't have won either way. I mean, if he had gone one way or the other, chances are there would still be some huge problems with Blair Witch. Both of them, though, show the inherent issues with tackling a sequel remake like this film. Blair Witch Project was a huge success at the time because people really did think it was somewhat real. Maybe there was some legitimacy to it. It helped that Heather kind of really disappeared and did not do very much at all with her acting career. Those are smart marketing decisions, and it really worked for the Blair Witch Project. But then when you do something like Blair Witch, you don't have that to run off of. The only thing you really have was the surprise factor, where Wingard didn't announce what he was making until very close to its actual release. So that's kind of a surprise. It was a marketing scheme for them. But it didn't necessarily work in the same way that the Blair Witch Project had when it actually faked all of this and kind of went a cannibal Holocaust direction with it, wherein they made everybody think that the actors really did perish in the making of the film. Wingard's odes to the original film often lack the tension and surprise that made them so enjoyable within the Blair Witch Project. His use of scenes that are nearly identical do Blair Witch no favors. Any knowledgeable audience member is going to expect these to happen anyway. So we're talking the placement of rock symbols, assembled stick figures that pop up after a night where they spend in the woods and nothing really happens to them, but the next morning they wake up and they see all these stick figures around. The circular route the characters make as they lose their way, even though they have a GPS. That's all here in this film as well, and it's pretty much shot for shot reused from the original Blair Witch Project. Still, though, Wingard misses the suspense that they had been able to generate within the Blair Witch Project, not only because it really looked real with the way that it was filmed as a home video, but also because of the real reactions from the group. I mean, Heather and her crew were very, I would say they were really believable in their, how they reacted to all of those situations. Here you can really tell that these are actors reacting to the situations. It's hard to set aside that expectation that, we're back in the same place, but this time it doesn't seem as real. Part of that is, the advanced technology and the realistic shots of the camera work. They take away a little bit, even though that's what you would expect from people with nice cameras making documentaries. At the same time, it really takes the viewer out of it a little bit, makes it seem too professionally done, too too high quality for what this film was going for. And it drops a little bit of the realism out of it. So that was one of the big issues that I had, was that Wingard really does stick quite closely a lot of the time to the original Blair Witch Project formula. At the same time, though, Wingard and Barrett's new ideas are often completely at odds with the original Blair Witch Project's subtle, brooding tension. There's an infusion of gore here that really has little bearing on the rest of the film. Although, if you listen to Simon Barrett later on after the film, he's been doing some tweets and stuff like that. He said he kind of gives some more information as to why that gore is included. And the one particular scene I'm talking about is where one of the characters, she kind of cuts her foot, and there's a thing that happens. I don't really want to give it away, but there's a thing that happens to her because of that. And another place where there's a stick in her leg, and so there's some gore there, but it's at odds with how the Blair Witch Project did things. It really wasn't in your face, it wasn't explicit, and since Wingard is really sticking to that formula for the most part throughout Blair Witch, it kind of feels weird and out of place that this is added to it as a new thing within the Blair Witch franchise. It just doesn't feel like it fits very well. The other thing that really does not work in the film's favor is the never-ending supply of jump scares, which is facilitated by the characters' headpiece cameras, which they wear on their ear but really look like they're protruding from their face based on the proximity of the camera work. These make it really easy for Wingard to throw in jump scares because they're so close on the actual person that those jump scares can occur, because technically if you're wearing it on your ear and you turn, you're going to see something there, but the camera would miss that if they're not facing that direction. So it really makes it easy for Wingard to do that, and I think that the audience will find that that's way too easy of a scare. Yeah, sure, loud noises and screams and stuff like that are going to make people jump in the audience, but at the same time, are they really warranted? Are they really effective in making a more tense situation? Not really. They're gonna generate a quick scare, and then people are gonna feel kind of cheated. And that's exactly the thing that happens in Blair Witch. I mean, it happens so many times that even Lisa remarks, will everyone stop doing that? I mean, because they kind of realize, wow, we've used this technique so many times that we really, we got to comment on it, or people are going to be commenting on it afterwards saying they did that way too much. And really, it doesn't matter that they comment on it. They have some sort of meta commentary about it, because they still really do it way too much. And, finally the audience is going to nod in assent to that. Please stop relying on the laziest way to scare viewers. It just is, it feels cheap. It feels, lazy. And that's not what you want to find with a remake like this with Blair Witch, because you don't want it to be lazy. You want it to be, if they're going to bother to do a remake like this, then you might as well go for it. Really put something together that is going to scare audiences, is going to create the same tension that the Blair Witch Project had. It just doesn't. The other thing that's really, ineffective for this film is the portrayal of the Blair Witch herself, and this happened after I wrote my review, or as Simon Barrett said, not the Blair Witch. So he's saying that every time we see whatever it is that we're seeing throughout this film, it's not the Blair Witch. It's something else. It's some entity that is also in the woods with the Blair Witch herself, or, it's something else. It doesn't really matter what it is, honestly. I'm going to say that right now. It doesn't matter what it is. It still looks cheesy. It still looks bad. It's not effective in any way, whether it's Blair Witch, Slender Man teleported from some other place, whatever it is. I mean, because it really does. It looks like a Slender Man portrayal, and no one is going to be looking at that and thinking, wow, that's really scaring me. The big part of Blair Witch Project was that we didn't see the witch. We didn't see anything there. It was very subtle. The scares came when the actual characters were scared. We were there with them, so we were experiencing the same things, and for them to not be able to see what's happening to them was really quite scary. Now, I don't know why this film treats the Blair Witch, or whatever the entity is, like Sasquatch rampaging through the woods, because there's loud growls, Apparently, this entity has the ability to just uproot gigantic trees and make them fall on its victims. And basically, it's like 15 feet tall. It really doesn't make any sense within the franchise or with what we've seen so far in the Blair Witch Project. I don't get what they were going for here. The subtlety of the original is replaced with something even worse than boring. It's just really silly. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I feel bad saying that about like pretty much everything within the Blair Witch, but that's the truth. And I don't want to mislead anybody into thinking that, yeah, maybe this is, the sequel or the remake that we've been hoping for. It's really not. It's not. And from the start, Blair Witch has a near nonsensical plot setup about years of grief and non-acceptance where James, given one inclination, just a video that doesn't even clearly show his sister, he uproots his entire life and his friends to go rummaging around in the forest, thinking that his sister may still be alive in the woods all this time, that she's somehow survived for like 20 years and has just been living there ever since. It's true that family members often do grieve in strange ways when they lack closure with a tragic event. And they kind of latch on to some impossible ideas that maybe their family member's still alive or, something else happened to them. They're just living in a different place. That does happen. That's not uncommon. But in this scenario, it just really doesn't make sense. It would make more sense if James just believed that Heather was alive somewhere, that she couldn't live through this tragedy and she had to like move away or something. That would make more sense than James thinking that, yes, she's still living in those same woods 20 years later, 2 decades later. It just doesn't, it doesn't seem plausible in the least. And so that whole stretch of plot just doesn't add up. Doesn't make sense. So, Blair Witch has some tense scenes. There are some scares. There's some claustrophobia, even when, Lisa is crawling through this small hole in the underground in the original Rustin Parr house. Pretty cool. Kind of tense and scary. Anybody who's afraid of small spaces, is going to be a really difficult part to watch. But for the most part, there's a lot of piercing loud noises and a lot of jump scares that really don't work when you put them all together as a tense film. And you're pretty much going to want to shut off this one and go watch the original instead. In a way, this is worse than Book of Shadows, which at least attempted to do its own thing. This is piggybacking on the Blair Witch Project's ideas, trying to outdo it with better technology and some weird reference to time travel where the group sees their own video footage when they go back to Burkittsville. That's the video footage that they first see when they're given the inclination that Heather's still alive. They see their own video footage. Doesn't make sense. Never brought up. The only way that you'll piece it together is if you quickly catch a glimpse of Lisa in the mirror that they originally see and think it's Heather. It's really Lisa. I don't get it, though. That never explained. Doesn't matter. It's like they totally forgot about that part. There's a reason Sanchez and Myrick never wanted to go back to the woods. Even when Wingard asked them if they were going to do like a sequel or anything like that, if they're going to go back to Blair Witch Project. It's because you're just going to keep getting lost and backtracking exactly like the characters do in this film, in the woods. You will never find that success that the Blair Witch Project had because it was a one and done thing, and you've got to search for other ideas rather than trying to, steal that success with a remake. So what did you think about Blair Witch? I really want to know because I know that it's for horror fans and people who really like the Blair Witch Project and people who didn't really like the Blair Witch Project. It's kind of been a dissenting point for them. Some people really did like it, thought it was pretty tense and scary. Some people, like me, did not like it very much at all. So I'd really want to know what you thought of it. So let me know in the comments. Certainly subscribe to this YouTube page. I don't post very often, but I would like to keep doing it pretty regularly. So hopefully, if I get more subscriptions, that'll even prompt me even more to post more videos. And definitely throughout the Halloween season, I'll be doing some because I'm very busy, but I do want to do a lot more videos because it's a big time for the horror community. And it's always a lot of fun. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you next time on this video channel if you subscribe. And let me know what you thought of Blair Witch Project in the comments. Thanks a lot.